That's a true story. Yeah, I was breaking into the wrestling business up in Minnesota, and another wrestler promoter, Vern Gagne, was the guy that broke me into the business, and he and Wally Carbo promoted the territory. A non-wrestler, Wally Carbo, but a heck of a guy. Wrestling's Yogi Berra. He would talk backwards. He was just a funny guy. But anyway, they gave me the job to set up the ring, referee matches, and every Saturday I had to go to the TV studio, which is in the Dykeman Hotel, and I'd set up the ring, and then I didn't referee the TV matches back then, so they would have me wait in the dark control room with a guy named Al DeRusha, and he would be saying camera 1, camera 2, da 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 da, and pushing buttons and lights and all that stuff. But it was a very dark room, and the wrestlers would come up from down in the basement where they dressed, up in the elevator, and they'd hit off the elevator and right into the ring, and they'd walk by the door, and nobody said hey or what or anything. Yeah. And finally, after several weeks of that, I was in there all by myself with Al DeRusha, and somebody walked by the door, and he stopped, and he looked in the ring, and he said, "You make a good German." I was taken aback, and that happened to like 3 or 4 weeks in a row. And he always stopped and he said, "You make a good German." And he'd go out and just go crazy in the ring. And Mad Dog Vachon was very big in the wrestling business. And then he'd leave, and he was just working his way back into the territory. He'd been there, but he left and was just coming back. So he was coming in for the TV, flying out. So I never saw him. Then finally we started working around the territory, the different towns around the territory. And for those towns, I'd drive, I'd set up the ring, and then I'd put on my referee stripes, and I'd referee the matches. Anyway, Mad Dog and I became friendly, and he was talking to me in the locker room after, and he said, "You'd make a good German." I said, "Well, I am German, ethnically I'm German. I was born in West Germany. That's the other side of the Missouri River. Omaha, Nebraska. That's west, right?
That's west.
Germany's.
That's west of Germany.
So anyway, he said, "I'd like you to come to Montreal and be my partner." Well, for a guy that's just breaking into the business, this is pretty good.
And Montreal was Mad Dog's hotbed. He was the king there.
Well, I didn't know that at the time, but yes, he was more than the king. They liked him better than the king. Anyway, so I said, "Sure, I'll go up and be your partner." He says, "We're going to call you Baron Von Pumpkin." I said, "What?" I didn't know. Oh, okay. Then I thought about it a little bit. I think we should just use my last name because Pumpkin is really a funny connotation. And
yeah.
Mad Dog's work was.
It probably worked out better this way.
Yeah, Mad Dog's work was very serious. He was not he was more of a pumpkin eater than he was a pumpkin.
And that was after Montreal. Would Indianapolis have been maybe the next your first singles title?
Probably title. Yeah, I worked in the Eddie Farhat.
Detroit.
Yeah. Detroit, Michigan, and Michigan and Ohio mostly. Yeah.
So when all of a sudden Dick the Bruiser, one of the biggest stars in the world, wants to bring you in, put the championship on you. That's when you got Bobby Heenan as a manager. Was Bobby your first manager?
Yeah.
Well, talk about Bobby. Everybody loves Bobby. Tell us a Bobby story.
Oh, there's so many. Well, Bobby and I just, for some reason, we hit it off right away when we met. First time I met him, we were, let's see. Oh, I was working for Eddie Farhat in the Michigan area in Detroit, and St. Louis, my first shot in St. Louis, they, for some reason, wanted me to come there. And I was supposed to work with Pat O'Connor, the former world champion at the time. And I flew in and I worked with Pat, and that match got over really good, mostly Pat's fault. And actually, he's the one that, in the ring that night, had me get the claw on him. And when he said, put the claw on me, I said, what's that? And I had seen Fritz von Erich put the claw on because I had worked that territory before this. And no, I hadn't. Actually, I haven't seen the claw yet, but I'd read about it in the magazine. So I did what he instructed me to do, and it got over terrific. And because of what he did after. Anyway, it got over. And then I didn't think much about that. But later that night, I was waiting to leave St. Louis, and Bobby and Jack Lanza were there, and we met and we talked, and we got to be friends. And you know, from there it just grew and grew and grew. And
Bobby was a heat magnet in those days too.
oh
at
yeah,
ringside.
he was
He
one
was
of the best in the business, like you were. He was.
Well, I stole a lot of my early stuff from Bobby.
yeah.
Actually, I researched it. If
Yeah.
you steal from one person, it's plagiarism, but if you steal from many, it's research. I researched a lot of people, but I stole a lot of
he was,
Bobby's.
He was a master at what he did.
When you worked Indianapolis, the territory, did you live in Indy?
Yep.
How many days a week was he running at that point? What was the schedule like?
Oh, you'd probably work 3 or 4 days. And the rest of the time you'd have off.
Yeah.
Most of the guys couldn't. They were happy with that because they wanted, you know, they were.
And short trips, like you said,
They were
in
short
Indiana.
trips,
It's you know, Fort Wayne is 120 miles from Indianapolis. Hammond the other way.
Chicago's not
Terre
that
Haute.
far. Yeah. Elkhart and all those places.